So welcome back, everybody. So moving forward for the next 20 to 30 episodes, we'll be really focusing on AI. And really it's going to be an AI series. The reason I'm producing this series is because we need to demystify AI. I could come back and tell everyone that AI is just a chatbot under everything that we already know, from systems, from security, to database, to everything, with exception to maybe mainframe. But even with mainframe, it can be if there's a chatbot can be applied to it. And so for the moving forward, we're going to be building out an AI system, mostly using Ollama and Open WebUI. And then we're going to show what we can put on top of those two products to more secure it. Then we're going to find ways to prove and break the system and then harden it. The whole goal, again, is to demystify. AI is not a complex system. It sounds like complex because a lot of it we don't know. It's under the hood. It's a black box. We have absolutely no clue how it works. And so this course and this series is to take that away and to have an understanding of how it functions. That being said, this episode will focus squarely on the install of Ollama and Open WebUI, how to connect to it. And so let's move forward. So the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to be installing Docker and Docker Compose onto the Ollama VM. So let's do that. Okay, we're going to add my OB user ID into the Docker group. Then we're going to verify that actually happened. Okay, so everything looks good here. Next, we're going to be creating some working directories in our /opt folder, which is usually limited to root access, and that's intentional. I don't want to dump this into a user folder. There are other locations that we can dump it, but for this, we're just going to dump it for /opt. So here we create our folder, and then we gave it the owner of OB, and then we CD'd or went to that folder. So now we're going to clear this up so we can see the next part very easily. So now we're going to create a Docker Compose file. And what we're going to do here is that we're going to pull two images. One is the Ollama image, and the next is the Open Web UI image. You'll notice here, or eagle eye viewers, you'll see them downloading or pulling older images. And that's because I want to have known vulnerabilities so that, one, we can crack it and break it, and then we can fix them. Whether that be a simple install, or we can place other products on top of it or inside our AI system. Here we can look at Open Web UI, and we can see that we have our base URL and we have our Web UI auth turned on. If this is not turned on and it's set to false or not entered, then users can just go to the URL and access the chat. So in this case, we would like to have authentication set. And down the road, we'll enhance this, but that will be for the fix it episode. So from here, let's do the install. So from here, this Docker Compose file looks pretty simple. A gotcha that should be noted here is that there's another option that is not noted here, but it should be highlighted. Is there's an option for enable signup set to false. If enable _ signup is set to false, then you're not going to be able to create an immediate admin account to log into your Open Web UI. So my strongest suggestion is, until you link it to a IDP, keep this turned on until you feel that there's no other users that will be accessing your AI. At that point, turn it to false. So now we're going to validate that the contents that we added into that Docker Compose file is still there and there's no formatting issues. So let's cat that file and see if there's any formatting or anything of amiss. Yep, everything looks good. Okay, let's Docker Compose up the containers. Next, we're going to do a sleep 60 seconds to give it time to spin up. Hopefully there won't be any issues, no rolling loops, and we will have a healthy container. Okay, let's now check to see how our containers are going. Okay, no rolling loops. So it's created status about a minute. I'm going to give it 30 more seconds just to give it some time to fully load up. Better to be safe than sorry. Okay, let's do this again. Okay, so 2 for 2. 2 minutes up, and the status is 2 minutes. Okay, so this is really good. No rolling loops. So now that we got our container up, let's go to our jump box. And let's do a curl to see what we can pull. We're basically going to pull and see what models are in Open WebUI. Okay, so there's no models yet. So that's what we would hope to see. If you see a model right after you install, that maybe because either you had a previous install or something, or you may have a bad install altogether and something got loaded that you weren't expecting. And I would investigate that. If you just installed and you don't recognize the models and it's not from a previous install, then I would investigate and either get rid of them, as you may have a tampered install. Now what we're going to do now is that since there's no models, we're going to install new models from our jump box to the Ollama box. So this is going to install directly on the Ollama box. So we're going to download Tiny Ollama. Okay, so that downloaded onto the Ollama box. Now let's hit that tags or models and see if it actually registered on the Ollama box. Yep, it did. There's our new model. Okay, so now what we're going to do is that we're going to open up a browser and we're going to hit the Open WebUI, get started. So, local host. You can put your own domain if you want in here. Okay, let's close this out. Okay. Our next step in Open Web. Okay, first off, ignore this. We don't care about the newer version. We are purposely installing an older version so that we can tinker and learn how it works and try to break it with known CVEs. Some won't. So just ignore this. Okay, so our next stop is to go down to the admin panel. And let's take a gander at that. Man, we know our users. Let's go to settings. That's what we care about. Enable new signups. That's fine. That's been turned off. So that's fine. We want to make sure our enable API key is turned on. We want to keep the API key endpoint restriction. Let's keep that turned off since we're trying to learn how this works. The token expiration or JWT expiration is set to -1, which means unlimited. There's no expiration. And if you watched my Authentic and Grafana episode, you'll know that leaving a token open indefinitely is a huge security vulnerability. And so what we want to do is change this to 1 hour. So we are saying that the token that we get is only good for that 1 hour. Afterwards, we would have to relog in. I would save this. What we're going to do next is that we're going to enable direct connections. So let's turn this on. So this is pretty important. The reason we want to enable direct connections is that one, there's an exploit here that we want to test when we do the prove it and break it episode. And that vulnerability is called CVE 2025644496. And what direct connections does is allow users to add external OpenAI compatible model servers. So that's something we're going to be toying with later on, which is very important. Another item that we want to do is we want to add, I have another server that has my GPU or a little heavier GPU that runs a lot of my processing for my coding. And so what we want to do is I'm going to be adding another server here. Let's do that. Now, at this point, I have not secured that desktop at all. And so only thing we need to do is add the IP address of the desktop so that Open Web can point to that desktop as well. Not only do we point to our Intel NUC, we're also going to be pointing to our desktop with a bigger GPU. Since there's no authentication, we can just add the IP and the port that Ollama listens on my desktop. We'll be changing the look at fixing our environment, but for now, this is all you need. Okay, so let's close out our server. And now go back to new chat. We're gonna go put that down, and now we're going back to our jump box. So our next thing we're going to do is that we're going to grab or try to grab our admin token. One of the items that I have not shown here is that I took a sandwich break and I created an environment variable of the admin password, and then I just cleared up my screen. But in here, we're basically creating an admin token variable, and we're posting to the auth sign-in API with the user ID of olb at localhost, and then the password and the environment variable of admin pass. And then from there, once this is completed, we're going to echo or print our admin token. Okay, there's our admin token. All right, so now here's where it gets fun. Now we start looking at creating a victim account. So we have our admin token, and we're going to create a victim account, and we're going to use that continuously in our labs. So we're going to be curling to the Ollama box, and then we're going to be adding or creating a new user ID called victim at lab.local, and we're going to be utilizing that admin token we just created and dumped, and then we can actually make use of this. This is going to be very cool. Now what we're going to do here is that same thing like we did with the admin part. Now we're going to do the same thing with the victim. So we're going to create an environment variable called victim token. And same thing, we're going to post up to the sign-in or the API for sign-in. And then we're going to type in the user ID of victim at lab.local and the victim123 exclamation. And then we're going to print out the token. Look at that beaut. So this is the exploit that, it's not really an exploit. It's just a finding. Now that, since nothing is authenticated or nothing is really locked down, these are tokens that are easy to obtain and can be a backdoor. So this is very cool stuff. So let's clear this up. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back here, and this is now back to our Open WebUI, and we're going back to external, and then we're going to go to, let's say, Quinn. Right now, this is the only model that's available on my local machine here, but we can definitely change this and download more like we saw earlier. Populates here. Okay, so now let's go back here onto our jump box, and let's do an API check and just see what models are currently available. So I have Arena, Quinn, and then Tiny. Okay. You'll notice here that our Quinn 2.5 is external, and local is the Tiny Llama. Okay, let's see what my desktop Ollama will show. Okay, so there's two. Now let's check what's on my Intel NUC and see what models I have there. I have the Arena, the Quinn, I have the Ollama. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to do a test so from the Open WebUI, I want to test, and I want to hit the Open WebUI via curl, and I want to do a quick test of inference between Open Web to my Ollama box on my desktop. Okay. So it did. So the inference did work. Okay. All right. So that validates that we're basically routing from Open WebUI to my Ollama box. All right. Cool. So once again, for those who may have skipped to different portions of the video here, I have 2 instances of Ollama and 1 instance of Open WebUI. My Open WebUI is living on my Intel NUC, which is 11th gen, and my Ollama, one of my Ollama instances is living on that same instance on my Intel NUC. As you will probably guess, my Intel NUC is not really meant to be a full handle AI system, but it's great to test and break instead of trying to break my desktop Ollama instance, which is what most processing for quick results would come from. So moving forward, unless explicitly pointed out, all my tests will almost always be on the Intel NUC, unless otherwise noted. So let's clear this up. So in conclusion here, we can now say we have an Open Web UI interface and a Ollama backend, in addition to connecting to another Ollama instance that is newer and faster. The whole point here is to create an environment where we can test Open Web UI and see ways to break it, in addition to finding malicious ways to utilize Ollama in the backend. In addition, I will be posting some outtakes this weekend, which will show 2 troubleshooting sessions that I did in an earlier setup that folks may find valuable. One is turning on our workspace tools settings and how to turn that on, in addition to trying to troubleshoot what available APIs are available on Open Web UI. So until then, I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you enjoy the outtakes that are coming out this weekend.